What if we told you not all black bears are black, and some bears that aren't black bears are? What if some bears that never set paw in North America somehow ended up stuck in the black bear identity crisis anyway? The bear family tree is a chaotic mess of mistaken identities, unexpected relatives, and evolutionary plot twists. The kind of story nature writes when it loses track of its own characters. There are bears with ancient legends, bears that live in trees, and bears that come in colours. Nature definitely didn't run past the marketing department first. So how did it all get so confusing? And who actually belongs where? Today, we're sorting through this family reunion of black-looking bears, one bear at a time, to figure out who's who's related, and why the world of bears refuses to make any sense. We've done our best to sort these bears, but if a sloth bear crashed a moon bear scene, or a brown bear wandered into the wrong segment, either they fooled us or we ran out of stock footage. First up is the moon bear, which, for once, is actually a black bear. Not just a bear that happens to be black, but a card-carrying member of the Black Bear Club. The moon bear, officially known as the Asiatic black bear, Ursus tibetanus, is a creature built for versatility. It roams across Eastern Asia, from the steep, unforgiving slopes of the Himalayas to the forests of China, Korea, Japan, and the jungles of Southeast Asia. For millions of years, it's been fine-tuning the art of surviving pretty much anywhere, swapping between tree climbing and ground stomping as needed. The most famous feature on the moon bear's resume is the pale, crescent-shaped marking on its chest, the moon-shaped badge that gives the species its name. Moon bears have built a reputation for intelligence, flexibility, and a survival toolkit that makes them the Swiss Army knife of the bear world. Whether ambling across the forest floor or hauling themselves into the treetops, they do it with surprising ease thanks to powerful limbs and curved claws that work like built-in climbing gear. They're one of the rare bears that actually build nests in trees, weaving branches together into surprisingly sturdy platforms where they can nap, snack, or just enjoy the view. Their diet shifts with the seasons because why commit to one thing when you can have it all? Spring and summer bring insects, berries, and tender shoots to the table. When autumn hits, they pile on the acorns and nuts like they're stocking up for a particularly boring winter. If the chance arises, they won't turn down carrion or even small animals, proving that flexibility really is the moon bear's secret weapon. All this adaptability allows them to thrive in habitats ranging from lowland forests to rugged mountains more than 3,000 meters high. But the moon bear, it's also a cultural heavyweight. In Korean mythology, the moon bear lands a starring role in one of the country's oldest legends. According to the story, a bear and a tiger both asked the gods to turn them into humans. The tiger tapped out early, but the bear's patience and persistence paid off. The gods rewarded her by transforming her into a woman who, in a plot twist worthy of a prestige drama, became the mythical mother of the Korean people. Quiet strength, patience, and a willingness to sit in a cave eating garlic and mugwort for 100 days. That's the moon bear's legacy. In Japan, some mountain communities considered the moon bear a spirit guardian of the forest. A chance meeting could either be a blessing or a warning, depending on the circumstances and your conscience. The bear's appearance signaled that the forest itself was watching, and anyone who took more than their share risked drawing its attention in ways they probably wouldn't enjoy. Cultural significance aside, moon bears are still bears, meaning they're perfectly happy raiding crops, poking around the edges of villages and helping themselves to the occasional stash of human snacks. They're clever enough to open latches, figure out basic puzzles, and generally cause headaches for anyone who assumed their food was safely stored. That curiosity helps them survive, but it also brings them into regular conflict with farmers who tend to take issue with uninvited, furry dinner guests. They're also surprisingly vocal for bears, producing a whole library of grunts, huffs, moans and roars to communicate with cubs, warn off rivals, or just broadcast their irritation with the world. That vocal range, combined with their intelligence, gives researchers rare insight into the social and emotional lives of bears, proving they're not just adaptable, they're expressive. With their distinctive chest markings, treehouse building habits and deep cultural roots, moon bears stand out as one of Asia's most fascinating bears. Sometimes it's about knowing when to climb, when to wait, and when to grab a snack on the way. Next up is the sun bear, one of the black but not black bears. The sun bear, Helarctos malayanus, holds the title of smallest bear in the world. But it makes up for that lack of stature with a healthy supply of attitude, agility, and the kind of resourcefulness that would make a raccoon jealous. It's carved out a living in the dense, steamy forests of Southeast Asia, including Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand and Borneo, where it manages to thrive in some of the most competitive real estate on Earth. Its sleek black fur, ideal for jungle life, comes with a bright patch of golden or cream fur right on its chest, shaped like a rising sun. That patch isn't just decorative, it's the inspiration for the bear's name. No two chest markings are exactly the same, making each one's sun patch as unique as a fingerprint or a particularly hairy birthmark. Surviving in the rainforest means being good at everything, and that's where the sun bear excels. It's an expert climber, spending much of its time high in the canopy, gripping tree trunks with long, curved claws that look like they belong on a horror movie poster. Whether it's grabbing fruit, finding a comfy nap spot, or just avoiding nosy neighbours, the treetops are prime real estate. But the most famous feature on this bear isn't its claws, it's its tongue. At up to 25 centimetres, 10 inches long, the sun bear's tongue is an engineering marvel, perfect for slurping up honey from deep inside tree hollows. That handy feature earned the sun bear the local nickname the honey bear, though it's just as happy vacuuming up termites and ants, because why stop at dessert when you can eat the whole buffet? The sun bear's compact size might make it look harmless, but this is a bear with zero chill when it comes to self-defense. When threatened, it rears up on its hind legs, flashes its claws, and lets out a roar that's way louder than anyone expects from something the size of a Labrador. Its willingness to throw down with tigers and clouded leopards has earned it a reputation for bravery, or possibly bad judgment, depending on how the fight turns out. Sun bears don't just exist in the physical world, they show up in local culture too. In parts of Borneo and Malaysia, some indigenous communities considered the sun bear a watcher of the wild. A chance encounter was seen as a sign to take only what you need and leave the rest for the forest, unless you wanted a very cranky bear spirit following you home. Other stories gave the sun bear a more mischievous twist. A trickster with a talent for raiding fruit orchards and honey stores, always one step ahead of humans and their increasingly creative attempts to lock their pantries. It's no surprise, sun bears are shockingly smart, capable of solving puzzles, opening latches, and even using tools in captivity, proving that size has nothing to do with brain power. Most sun bears live quiet, solitary lives, prowling the forest floor or snoozing up in the canopy. But their intelligence, agility and boldness make them a formidable presence in their ecosystem. The sloth bear is also not a black bear, even though it's black and absolutely a bear. The sloth bear, Melursus ursinus, is the shaggy misfit of the bear family, and it seems perfectly fine with that. Roaming the forests and grasslands of India, Sri Lanka, Nepal and Bhutan, the sloth bear has made a career out of bug hunting. A lifestyle choice that doesn't exactly scream apex predator, but it works. Evolution gave it all the right tools for the job, including a long, scruffy coat, powerful claws, and a face that looks like it's permanently stuck somewhere between confusion and mild disapproval. The most unusual feature, though, is its elongated snout and the notable absence of its top front teeth. A deliberate evolutionary remodel that lets the sloth bear vacuum up termites and ants with surprising efficiency. Its lips form a tight seal, and its nostrils close up like tiny shutters to keep out dust while it hoovers up bugs like a forest Roomba. It's a bear built for a life lived nose first, but a diet of termites and ants only gets you so far, so sloth bears are happy to branch out. They'll gladly chow down on fruit, flowers, honey, and even the occasional bit of carrion when they stumble across it. Their powerful claws, designed to rip open termite mounds, also come in handy for tearing apart rotting logs and, on occasion, awkwardly scaling trees. They can climb, but it's definitely not their strong suit. They're much more comfortable shuffling along the forest floor like a hairy, bug-fueled vacuum. One of the sloth bear's signature moves, and one of its most unexpectedly wholesome quirks, is its parenting style. Sloth bear mums are known for carrying their cubs on their backs, giving the little ones a front-row seat to all the termite mound destruction. Cubs cling to their mother's thick fur for almost a year, hitching a ride through a landscape full of leopards, tigers and other things with sharper teeth and better night vision. Under all that scruffy fur, though, is a bear that does not mess around. Sloth bears have a well-earned reputation for bad tempers and a willingness to throw hands or paws at anyone or anything that gets too close. Whether it's a tiger, a leopard, or just an unlucky human, the sloth bear's fight response kicks in at full speed. Their go-to strategy is to charge, swing and aim straight for the face, which is why they're responsible for more bear attacks on humans in India than any other species. They're not mean, just deeply committed to personal space. That reputation for unpredictable aggression gave rise to some eerie spirit lore in rural India. To some, sloth bears weren't just animals. They were protector of the wilderness, sent to punish humans who disrespected the land. Their upright stance, shaggy silhouette, and the unsettling chorus of snorts, huffs, and loud vacuum-like sucking noises they make while eating only added to their supernatural reputation. In some stories, they were thought to be the restless spirits of ancestors, roaming the forest to enforce the unwritten rules between people and the wild. But not every tale paints them as vengeful ghost bears. In some indigenous traditions, sloth bears are seen as forest caretakers, responsible for aerating the soil, scattering seeds, and keeping the insect population in check. To these communities, the sloth bear wasn't a monster, it was just doing its job, playing a crucial role in shaping the very landscape it lived in. Of course, the most famous sloth bear isn't a spirit at all. It's Baloo, the laid-back bear from The Jungle Book. In Rudyard Kipling's original stories, Baloo was a stern but wise mentor, teaching Mowgli the rules of the jungle. Disney took that character, shook out all the seriousness, and gave us the honey-loving, carefree bear who sang the bare necessities into pop culture history. Real sloth bears definitely love honey, but they don't do laid back. They shuffle, snort, dig, and generally take life with the same low tolerance for nonsense that made them famous. For all their quirks, sloth bears are impressively resilient. They've adapted to dry forests, rocky foothills and grassy scrublands, sharing territory with some of the world's most formidable predators. Whether they're digging into a termite mound, giving their cubs a piggyback ride, or standing their ground against a tiger, sloth bears are living proof that there's no single way to be a bear. Sometimes survival isn't about being the biggest or the fastest. Sometimes it's about being just strange enough to make it work. If the bear family tree wasn't already confusing enough, the Andean bear, also known as the spectacled bear, comes along to make sure no one ever fully understands what a black bear actually is. This is a black bear that isn't a black bear, because of course it is. It's the only bear species native to South America, and while its thick, shaggy coat is almost always black, genetically it's not particularly close to either the American black bear or the Asian black bear. The Andean bear has been out there doing its own thing for somewhere between 5 and 7 million years, hanging out on its own isolated branch of the bear family tree. Its claim to fame, apart from confusing everyone, is its distinctive facial markings. White or tan patches that can look like a pair of glasses or spectacles, which is how it ended up with the very literal name, spectacled bear. These markings aren't just for show. They're unique to each bear, the equivalent of a furry fingerprint, meaning no two spectacled bears have quite the same face. While most bears dabble in tree climbing, the Andean bear is fully committed. It spends a huge chunk of its life up in the canopy, where it's comfortable enough to build platform-like nests out of branches. Sometimes these are used for midday naps. Other times they double as convenient fruit buffets. Speaking of food, The Andean bear is one of the most vegetarian bears alive today, with a menu that leans heavily toward bromeliads, fruit, nuts and cactus flowers. It's not a strict herbivore though. If the opportunity presents itself, it will happily snack on insects, small animals or the occasional piece of carrion. The Andean bear's home turf is the cloud forests and high-altitude slopes of the Andes Mountains, stretching from Venezuela to Bolivia. These misty, remote forests provide plenty of cover, which makes the Andean bear notoriously difficult to study. They're also the only bear species found south of the equator because somebody had to hold down the southern hemisphere. Despite their low profile, Andean bears have worked their way into local folklore, where they're often seen as the forest's watchful soul, a recurring theme when humans can't quite figure out what an animal is up to. They've also built up a more practical reputation as crop raiders, especially when they descend from the mountains to help themselves to cornfields, which does not tend to endear them to local farmers. So while they're black, and they're definitely bears, the Andean bear is yet another reminder that colour alone doesn't get you into the black bear club. It's a non-black black bear in every way except actual colour, happily sitting off on its own evolutionary branch, a fuzzy question mark in the already chaotic bear family tree. Then there's the American black bear, whose fur chart looks like nature couldn't pick a theme. The American black bear, Ursus americanus, is the reigning champion of adaptability. A species so versatile, it's managed to carve out a living across dense forests, mountain slopes, swamps and even semi-arid scrublands. And while the name black bear makes it sound like it would be dressed exclusively in black, these bears come in an unexpected rainbow of shades, from jet black to cinnamon brown, blonde, and even rare silvery blue or pure white. No matter the shade though, every single one of them is genetically an American black bear, all part of a lineage with a story that stretches back millions of years. To figure out how black bears ended up so colourful, you have to rewind more than 20 million years back to a time when all modern bears, including black bears, brown bears, polar bears and even the sun bear, shared a common ancestor. This ancient bear-like creature prowled the forests of Eurasia, splitting its time between climbing trees, rooting for plants and scavenging whatever unfortunate animal wandered into its path. As those early bears spread into new environments, they adapted, splitting off into the wildly diverse family of bears we know today. The American black bear took its own evolutionary path around 4 to 5 million years ago, when it split off from the ancestors of the brown bear, Ursus arctos, and polar bear, Ursus maritimus, which are still its closest living relatives. Despite that connection, American black bears followed their own playbook, becoming smaller, more agile climbers, and adapting to forest life in ways their bigger, bulkier cousins never quite managed. That early detour is part of what gave black bears the flexibility to thrive in everything from dense woodlands to alpine meadows and coastal marshes, and occasionally someone's backyard. The Asiatic black bear, Ursus tibetanus, better known as the moon bear, shares a much older ancestor with the American black bear. Their lineages split at least 5 million years ago, probably when ancient bear populations were cut off from each other between Asia and North America. Despite both being called black bears, the two species have spent millions of years evolving separately, adapting to wildly different landscapes and lifestyles, one in the dense forests of eastern Asia, the other across the varied terrain of North America. So why are they called black bears if so many of them aren't black at all? That's thanks to early naturalists and scientists who first documented black bears in the dark forests of eastern North America, where the local population happened to be almost entirely black. In those shadowy woods, black fur was perfect camouflage, allowing bears to blend into the underbrush and sneak up on berries or each other. By the time researchers discovered that western black bears came in cinnamon, blonde and chocolate brown, the name had already stuck, inaccurate branding and all. But that colour variety isn't random. In open environments, like the mountain meadows and rocky slopes of the western United States, lighter fur blends better with grass, rock and scrub. In Alaska, there's even a rare population of blue-grey glacier bears living in Glacier Bay, where their silvery coats blend perfectly with ice and mist. Meanwhile, in British Columbia's Great Bear Rainforest, the famous spirit bear, a black bear with creamy white fur, has become both a scientific curiosity and a cultural icon. That pale colouring comes from a recessive mutation in the MC1R gene, the same gene responsible for red hair in humans. Genetic studies have confirmed that spirit bears are 100% American black bear, not hybrids or a separate species. The same applies to all the cinnamon, blonde and glacier bears. They're all full-fledged members of the American Black Bear Club. Their unusual colours are just the result of regional adaptations, random chance, and the occasional genetic surprise. In fact, two black parents can produce blonde or white cubs, as long as both carry the right recessive gene. The story of the American black bear is ultimately the story of survival through flexibility, a species shaped by millions of years of environmental shifts and genetic twists. From its ancient ancestors in Eurasia, to its split from brown bears and polar bears, to the stunning palette of fur colours found today, the black bear is a perfect reminder that nature doesn't care about tidy categories. And sometimes the most adaptable creatures are the ones who refuse to fit in a single box. So, why aren't the sloth bear and sun bear part of the Black Bear Club even though they're black? And what about the Andean bear, the only bear in South America, who also shows up to the party dressed almost entirely in black? And while we're at it, how did the American black bear and the Asian black bear both end up with the same name, despite living on opposite sides of the planet and evolving in completely different environments? About 6 million years ago, the sloth bear and the sun bear both descended from the same common ancestor somewhere in Southeast Asia. But when habitats shifted and new environments opened up, the two populations took radically different paths. One group eventually became the sloth bear, a shaggy, termite-slurping specialist custom-built for the forests and grasslands of the Indian subcontinent. The other group evolved into the sun bear, the smallest bear in the world, perfectly designed for life in the tropical rainforests of Borneo and Sumatra, where it spends much of its time climbing trees and raiding bee nests. Both ended up with black fur, but neither one actually belongs to the black bear family. Instead, they sit off on their own isolated branch of the bear family tree, far removed from their black bear namesakes. The Andean bear adds yet another twist to the confusion, is also almost always black, except for those distinctive pale markings around its eyes and snout that give it that perpetually surprised look and its fitting name. But genetically, the Andean bear isn't closely related to any black bear species. Its lineage split off from the rest of the bear family somewhere between 5 and 7 million years ago, and it's been out there ever since, doing its own thing. Perfectly adapted to its high-altitude, tree-filled world, where it builds nests out of branches and leans heavily on plants for food. That brings us to the actual black bears, the American black bear and the Asian black bear. They might share a name, but their shared history ended at least 4 to 5 million years ago. Back then, a population of ancient bears split. Some headed into Asia, where they gradually evolved into the Asian black bear, while others crossed into North America, eventually becoming the American black bear we know today. Despite the identical names, these two bears have been living entirely separate evolutionary lives ever since, with no more connection to each other than either of them has to a brown bear. In fact, the American black bear is actually more closely related to brown bears and polar bears than it is to the Asian black bear. All three species sit comfortably on the Ursus family tree, a branch that split away from other bears around 6 to 7 million years ago. Around that same time, the sun bear and sloth bear took their own separate evolutionary exit, leaving the Ursus bears to grow into some of the largest, most widespread bears alive today. So to sum it all up, not all black bears are black, not all bears that are black bears, and some bears that live nowhere near North America somehow still ended up tangled in the whole black bear identity crisis. Yes, some brown bears moonlit as black bears in earlier footage. That's what happens when stock footage runs dry. But don't worry, they're getting their own video because every bear deserves its time to shine.